Hello and welcome to Living by Heart. My name is Dawn and I am here to inspire you to connect more deeply with God and your family. Here we are today talking about the power of one word. This one word, I think you will be amazed at how it can actually change everything. So today we're going to just really break it down. This one word that you can imagine, you would think to yourself that it's a large word, but it's actually a very small one. So let me give you an example and see if you can identify the word that needs to be changed. I love you, but it totally frustrates me when you don't pick up your room. Did you hear that little but in there? That word has tremendous power to actually negate everything that was said before it. So even if you're trying to be a positive parent or a positive spouse or a positive friend in whatever relationship you find yourself in, using that word but has this incredible negative connotation. And sometimes we don't even realize we're doing it. And as you take notice of this, you're gonna notice that it's actually used a lot more often than you think. So let's go through some of the situations in which you would hear that word but, and let's talk about exchanging it for another word. Let's stick with our example. If I say to you, I love you and I really need you to pick up your room. If I substitute, did you hear? If I substitute that word and, it has this incredible effect of actually letting both things be true. I can actually love you and I can have frustration. And so when we use that word and, it includes everything that you're trying to communicate. Sometimes I think in our frustration though, is when we sort of slip into this more negative way of communication. So situation number one where you might see this come up is when you're setting a boundary or maybe like working through a conflict or confrontation. Let's just say it's with your teenager. And so in that situation, you might actually say, I love you, but I also need you to be super respectful and you can't speak to me that way. And we might get really emotional. But if I use that magical word and, everything changes. Listen to this. I love you, and I also really need for you to be respectful. And how I would know you were respectful is by X, Y, and Z. So suddenly there's this magical thing that has happened where your teen or the person you're in conflict with is able to hear, hopefully, all of your heart for them. And what I think is so cool about this is it actually draws them in. So when you lead with a warm, connecting comment, like, I love you, or I totally understand, or of course you feel that way, somebody automatically feels connected to you and authentically in relationship with you, and they are soft. Their heart begins to soften, and it opens them up to be able to hear the second part, which might be a little bit more difficult for them to hear, but it is the truth and it needs to be communicated. Now, another situation in which you might find the and versus but helpful is if somebody is sharing with you. So sometimes when our kids or our spouse or even our friend, if they share vulnerably with us, they sometimes vent and it's really hard to hear their pain. And sometimes we as helpers, givers, lovers of these people, we want to fix it. And so sometimes what we end up doing is negating how they feel by saying something like this. I totally understand, but you know that you're pretty. So if your teenager was coming to you with some like, I don't know, mom, I don't feel very beautiful, or I'm struggling with like feeling awkward in my body, you know, if we try to fix it by just like a but, and try to tell them what we see, it's just not as effective. And so if we were to respond to them with an and instead, we could say, I totally understand where you're coming from, and I really want to be there for you right now. What do you need from me? And it's really a lot better than these pat answers or ways, things that we attach to but to kind of cut that communication off and just fix it because we want them so desperately to be in a better place. So that is situation number two. Situation number three is how you speak to yourself. In the therapy world, we call it self-talk. How you speak to yourself, let's say, especially in a situation with negativity, let's say that you screw up royally. Let's say that you totally lose your cool on your kids and you end up yelling and maybe you throw something. Okay, maybe that's what happens. And so the way that we talk to ourselves, we often will again negate kind of the truth about ourselves, and it doesn't reflect what God would say about us. And so I might say to myself, I know that God says he loves me, but there's no way he can forgive me for what I just did. You know, the way that we speak to ourselves. And so instead, we might be able to rephrase it and speak the truth, which would be, I made a mistake and I am still lovable, even though that's hard to receive. So the and versus but really allows us to hold two seemingly opposing things in our hands at the same time. And this is truly an art. You know, there's a science to relationships and then there's an art to relationships. So let me practice my own skills on you and let you know that all of these skills are very probably maybe even new to you, or maybe they aren't. And they still require practice. They still require practice. So I hope that as you're listening, you can really get just a sense of grace and mercy even to yourself when we are holding these two opposing forces in our hands at the same time. I hope that you've enjoyed this hot tip for relationships today, this one word that changes everything. And I would challenge you, how many times this week can you say and instead of but to yourself, to your family members, and to those who feel safe sharing with you? And again, if this has been helpful to you and you find it valuable, be sure to like this video and hit subscribe if you want to hear a little bit more.